Welcome to the Rhino Resilience podcast. I'm Chris Rhino Swenson. This is where we build calm strength, grounded resilience, and the mindset to carry what life throws at us, especially in rural life. Let's get into it. Out here, we hear this all the time. You've got to be tough. And the truth is, that's right. You definitely got to be tough. I mean, life out here does require toughness. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you always have these long days, there's hard work, things don't go always as planned. But here's what I've been thinking about. I mean, we say that a lot, right? We always say we need to be tough. But we don't always define what that actually means. Because if toughness just means pushing through everything, handling it all on your own, never slowing down, then why are so many people exhausted, overwhelmed, struggling silently? You know, maybe we haven't been taught strength the wrong way, but we've only been taught part of it. You know, most people that I've worked with over the years, I mean, they weren't weak. I mean, not even close. You know, they were some of the toughest people that you'll ever meet, but they were wore down. And not because they broke in one moment. They were wore down over time. They knew how to be strong in the moment, but they never were shown how to stay strong for the long haul. And talking about this, I want to be crystal clear here that what I'm going to talk about is this isn't about getting rid of toughness. It's about evolving it. Because you're not doing it wrong. You've just never been shown how to make it even stronger. You know, I always use the analogy of like a coin. And I think of real strength like a coin. You know, on one side, there's toughness, there's grit, there's pushing through no matter what. And that matters. That's real. But on the other side, there's calm, control, adaptability, recovery. The skills that most of us were never taught. And here's the truth. You don't get to pick one, because a coin with one side isn't a coin at all. I mean, think about a tree for a second. You know, the ones that look the strongest, they're big, they're rigid, they're solid, right? They're strong. Those are often the ones that snap in a storm. But the ones that bend, that adjust, they don't break. They move with the pressure, and then they come back. And if you're honest with yourself for a second, think about this. How many times have you just tried to stand firm, to push through, not bend, even when everything in you was worn down? Yeah, that works for a while, but it doesn't hold up forever. Think about it. If I were to take this cup right here, and I would have to hold it right in front of me, out in front of me, hold it like this. Now I've got the strength to be able to lift my arm up and hold this cup out, right? Doesn't take too much strength, but I got it. However, if I have to hang on to this for a half an hour, or even longer, it's going to start to feel like my arm's going to fall off, right? And the interesting thing is, the water in my cup right here is the same exact weight that it was. It's just without learning how to put it down and gain some recovery, my arm's just going to fall off. Like I said, the same weight, but it begins to wear us down. And I'll give you a real example of this. There was a time I decided that I was going to run a 10K every day for 30 days, right? And now I hadn't been exercising much leading up to that point. I really haven't. But in my mind, that didn't matter because I was going to be tough, right? So I started, got day 1, day 2, day 3. And then one day I heard a pop in my knee. And right away I knew something wasn't right. But what did I tell myself then? Suck it up. Keep going. You got this. That's what tough people do. So I did. And after a couple more days, I had this moment where I had to be honest with myself. I knew that I could push through. I knew I would do it. I could finish those 30 days. I knew that. But I was probably going to end up laid up in a hospital, not able to do much of anything after that. And that's when it hit me. Maybe being tough wasn't just about pushing through no matter what. Part of being tough was being wise and smart. Maybe being tough was about making the right call so I could keep going long term. So I stopped. And at that time, that didn't feel like toughness. But looking back now, honestly, that was the moment that I started to understand what real toughness actually is. And that's the other side of the coin we're talking about. Not just pushing through, but knowing when to adjust. Because when we rely on just one part, which is usually toughness, we end up looking strong. But underneath, we're exhausted, overwhelmed, or stuck. I mean, it's kind of like trying to run a tractor on one tire. Yeah, it might move for a bit, but it's going to break down eventually. That's what happens when we rely on just toughness. You know, sometimes the toughest decision that you can ever make is to stop before you break. And this actually ties into something people ask me all the time. Why the rhino? What's with this rhino thing, right? Because when most people picture a rhino, they picture this unstoppable force, something powerful, something aggressive, something that can't be moved. And that part is true. But what most people don't realize is that's not the whole picture of a rhino. I'll be honest. I mean, there was a time I saw it that same way too. You know, I thought that being a rhino meant putting your head down, pushing through no matter what. And that was my version of toughness. But over time, I started to see something differently. Because you see, a rhino, truthfully, isn't constantly charging. You know, most of the time it's calm, it's steady, it's aware of what's around it. Excuse me. It doesn't waste energy. I mean, it doesn't react to everything. You know, honestly, you could come across a rhino in the wild and it has a little one with it. And it's not going to do anything to you. I mean, it's going to keep its eye on you, but it's not going to do anything unless you provoke it. And then it definitely will. But if you come across a bear with a little one, you might be in trouble. With a rhino, maybe not. The truth is, the rhino knows when it needs to move, and it moves with purpose. The rhino isn't powerful because it's always charging. It's powerful because it knows when to. And that's when it like clicked for me that the rhino isn't one sided. It's tough when it needs to be, no doubt, like the rest of us. But it's also calm, steady, and aware, something we all need to work on. It's both sides of the coin working together. Toughness gets you through, but its complete strength is what carries you forward. And what's even more interesting is even some of the toughest warriors in history understood this same idea. I mean, take the samurai, for example. They were disciplined, tough, highly trained warriors. But that's not all they focused on. They were trained to stay calm, to remain steady. And actually, they were required to study things like writing, art, even gardening. Why? Because they understood something most of us were never taught, that if you can't control your mind, your toughness won't hold up under pressure either. You know, one of the greatest samurai to ever live, his name was Miyamoto Musashi. And he went undefeated in over 60 duels. Like no one's ever done that before and never have. And he wasn't, when he did all these, he wasn't always the biggest. He wasn't the strongest, but he understood the mental side of the fight. He stayed calm, he stayed steady and controlled. While others got frustrated, emotional, and lost control of themselves. And once that happened, they were already losing. Not because they weren't tough, but because they couldn't control what was happening inside. And out here in rural areas, this isn't just about a sword fight. This is everyday life. It's when stress stacks up, when things don't go as planned, when you're tired and everything feels like too much. I mean, if your mind starts running, if frustration takes over, you're fighting yourself at that point. I mean, when we look at our higher rates of anxiety and depression and suicide rates out here in rural areas, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of them. But I do think that there's a piece that doesn't get talked about enough. And that's the way many of us were taught to be strong. We weren't taught, basically, when it comes down to it, we were taught one side of the coin really well, right? But not the other. And sometimes that other side gets judged, seen as weakness or something you shouldn't need. So people stay on the side that they know, even when it's not working anymore. You see, a lot of people aren't struggling because they're weak. They're struggling because they've been strong without support for too long. And what's important to understand is what I'm talking about isn't about replacing toughness. It's about completing it. Because real strength isn't just about pushing through. It's about knowing how to carry the weight the right way. So, if you're sitting there right now thinking like, that's me. I've been the rigid tree. I've been pushing through everything. Then the question becomes, what do you actually do differently? What are you going to actually do differently? And I want to make this simple, that this isn't about changing everything overnight, right? It's about starting to train your mind just a little differently. So, first off, we all need to develop awareness, and that is to notice. You've got to start noticing when you go into push mode, right? And when you notice that, pause. Pause and ask, what do I actually need right now? And then shift your self talk. Replace like suck it up with let's handle this the right way. You know, how am I going to go about this differently? And then make a small adjustment. Making one small adjustment before things stack up. If you want to be tougher for the long haul, then you've got to learn how to carry things differently. And honestly, this is exactly why Rhino Resilience is built on 4 pillars. Because real strength isn't just about being tough. When we rely on one part, like usual toughness, we end up looking strong. But underneath, we're exhausted, we're overwhelmed, we're even stuck, right? You see, toughness can get you through, but complete strength is what carries you forward, okay? It's an important thing to do. And I want to rephrase that because that's exactly the point. Toughness will get you through, but complete strength is what carries you forward. And complete strength isn't one dimensional. Okay. It's not one dimensional. It's about being tough with an unbreakable will, calm and steady under pressure, adaptive when life changes, and quietly powerful without needing to prove it. That's the kind of strength that actually lasts. So, over the next few episodes that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to break each one of these down and show you how to actually build them into your life. But I want to say one more thing before we start to wrap up a bit here, that this isn't something you figure out one day and you're done, right? I mean, honestly, this is something that I'm working on too. It's a lifetime of work every day. There are still moments where my first instinct is to push through. The difference now is that I catch it sooner. But I'm not perfect, and I don't want you thinking that I am either. Because this isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming more aware and getting a little better over time. Like I said, this is a lifelong process, and we're all on that path. I'm just walking it with you. So you don't have to become someone else to be strong. You just need a better definition of strength, one that actually holds up when life doesn't let up, right? So if this episode hits home, share it with someone who needs it. And make sure that you follow and subscribe and check out the newsletter over at rhinoresilience.com. Stay steady. We're in this together.